I've never had an issue with my, but just keep it close. Yeah. Sorts of super fun things. Hello to all of you who are watching us from Twitch. Hope you have a good time with us today. We're having a blast at the show so far.
This is awesome.
Yeah, we've been setting up stuff in the booth. Everything we're talking about today, we've got demoing in the booth, so you can come back and see us. Of course, we'll be here all weekend. But first, I guess let's just do some intros.
Yeah, let's do it.
So like I said, we are Fast Pinball. Hello, this guy right here.
I'm Aaron Davis. I started Fast Pinball with Dave Beecher. We'll point his name out here in a minute. This is my first show in like 3 years. Like we took a year off before COVID hit, and then the world took 2 years off, and this is my first show back, and it's awesome. It's great to be here.
Yeah, that's glad to be back. That's Aaron. My name is Brian Madden, also with Fast Pinball. 2 employees of Fast Pinball are not with us here in Texas. That is Dave Beecher and Eli Kurtz. A lot of these folks you may recognize names. We've been in the pinball industry a long time. We'll talk, by the way, working at Fast Pinball is what we do as our jobs. This is not a side hustle for us. This is not a part-time thing. Like all 4 of us are full-time employees, and all we do all day, every day is think about pinball and help people make pinball machines. So we are very excited about this sort of thing. I assume you would not be here if you have not heard of Fast Pinball before. Very briefly, we make pinball control systems. We make circuit boards, lots of them, and we'll talk more about that stuff today. I feel like, though, first we should maybe just look at some background, like kind of our roots, because you may not have heard of Fast Pinball, and you certainly probably might not get too much in the weeds of the circuit boards that are inside a pinball machine, but you've probably seen some pinball machines maybe that was using our technology, especially within the homebrew community. So if anyone's seen or heard of Nightmare Before Christmas by Mark and City, Mass Effect by Anthony Van Winkle, Fight Club from Michael Becker, Sonic Spinball by Ryan McQuaid, Zelda by Wilder Ham, Rule of the Hordes by Alexander Spoor, Spaceballs, the pinball machine from John Marsh, Metroid from Mark Seiden. These are just a taste of some of the machines that have been built using Fast Pinball's platform technology. And a lot of these are complete projects, and a lot of these guys have made more than one project.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been really fun even so far at the booth since we've been here, is people who come up and you start talking about some of the projects that have been made with ours, and then they realize they've spent, game after game playing them at different shows and stuff. So it's very cool to be able to see them bridge the gap between like what we're doing, geeking out in our booth with a bunch of wires and stuff like that running all over the place, and actually see the finished games that somebody actually built with what we do. So definitely cool to see.
Anything to get more pinball in the world.
I'm gonna laugh the whole time through this.
It's just so much fun. Building pinball machines. I mean, you have the idea, and we make it. I mean, that's we're all makers. That's why we're here. That's why we're into pinball and not iPhone games and these kinds of things. We want our hobbies to be 5 figures only, please. But what we do at Fast Pinball is we build stuff, fundamentally, right? We build the circuit boards that go in pinball machines. People use these things that we build, and when they use it, our platform grows. Our platform becomes stronger. We understand more about what people are using and how they're using it and what they need. And then we continue and we build more stuff.
Yep.
And so what you see, if you look at our progression over the years as we've been doing this, is that we're really looking at the problems that pinball makers are running into, looking at the challenges they're having, and figuring out what can we do to help them spend more time building pinball machines and creating their game, and less time like figuring out wire bus ratings and current amping and how we're going to turn this computer on or fire this or sense. We'll handle all the dumb, boring back-end pinball technology so you can build pinball machines. And the idea, too, is what we're doing is professional quality stuff. This is Dave, we mentioned earlier. That's Dave in the EMI testing chamber. Our stuff is, for example, for Dave, he's decades and decades as a hardware engineer, electrical engineer. The stuff we're building is with the idea, if you're going to take a machine into production, you need FCC certification, you might need UL listings, things like that. All of our products are designed with that in mind. So these are sort of like legitimate professional quality type products.
Yeah, if you start off with like this best practice guidance and stuff like that, and the things we tell you to start with and build from there. So if you do make a great game and get people playing it and loving it, you're not going to have to reinvent the thing when you go to actually produce it. And even like you showed, like Dave, like literally in the EMI chamber there, we've had made so many great connections with different industries and stuff because who doesn't want to talk about pinball? We can say, oh, we do board designs and stuff like that. Well, Dave uses it as like calling cards for other contract work. So now they go, I have a chamber. Maybe you can bring a pinball machine to us and maybe you leave it with us for a while and we can play it. Maybe we can put it in the chamber. There's a lot of great ways to use a lot of what Dave has done for a long time to make this stuff like world class. And so seeing what people build with it, we want to see the problems they run into. What were the challenges? Why did you have to do a ridiculous wiring arrangement and let us help you make it better?
And you'll see that through the products over all the iterations. For those of you who have built pinball machines or familiar with this, we had our fast core controller, which was our controller board, our original board. That was replaced with the nano controller, which was the next model and had some refinements. The new controller, which I don't think we publicly mentioned before right now, so there you go, internet, is our Neuron Controller. And again, the Neuron Controller is just basing on the lessons we've learned as we've been building these products over all the years. These are just the controllers themselves that control the pinball machines. There's the I/O boards that plug in. These are where your switches and your drivers and solenoids connect. The I/O boards are the same across all the controller models. So there's different models. The 08, 04, there's 8 switches, 4 drivers. There's 16 drivers, 16 switches, 32 switches, 8 drivers in the 3208. The idea is there's small boards that you put underneath your machine, more local to where you need them in the machine. By the way, these boards are smart. Every board on here has an ARM processor on it. So the node boards, essentially, the I/O boards, they have ARM processors. They run code on them. So when they're doing switch level scanning, we can be very, very quick scanning for switches. When you're firing coils automatically, right, your flippers and pop bumpers, they need to be very fast. Those are plugged in the same board. There's literally a local ARM processor on that board that's handling triggering and firing it very, very quickly.
Yeah, and when the tuning matters, the timing of things, you'll even see, like we were, I guess not surprised, but it was cool to see in the beginning when people were making like street level games, classic, Bally style, old school games, they were actually slowing down the response time so that it felt like the era. So not only is the timing is precise enough where it's not faster or slower, it's like I want it to be exactly this slow or this fast when it responds, and it lets you really tune the game to what you want it to feel like. So it's been really cool to see what people do to actually make the game feel and change, create some urgency or some anxiety by changing those timings and stuff like that throughout the game. So it's all that fine tuning is precise enough that you can give it the time that you want and actually get that time back, not just a ballpark approach to the timings.
And the core products we've been making for a long time, as we find that people are struggling, well, how do I power my optos? I need, 5 volts and a resistor or something, and it's like, we got that for you. We make a little postage stamp size opto emitter. It takes the 12 volts from your machine and powers your optos. Let's do a trough opto now, so you can plug your trough directly into this fast system. Troughs have 7 switches in them, right? 6 balls plus the ball jam position. We've got 1 extra switch, because our little headers on those I/O boards have 8 switches. Hey, let's make a plug into the shooter lane switch. That's all right there. These are just little things that are convenient that people find as they're building machines. How do we solve this? How do we solve this? Rgb Dmd Displays, so Rgb LED DMDs. RGB segments, which...
That's a new one, too.
That's probably a new one. If you know, Haggis is making the Fathom pinball machine. That's a fast platform they're using, so they're using those segmented displays, for example. But these plug right in. These are things that we're building based on what people need. And, like I said, everything we're designing, we're thinking through the process of if you want to take this game to commercial production or have someone build it or you want to build it, what do you need? So As an example, a power filter board. This is one of the boards that we built, which is when people are building their pinball machines, how do I get power? What power supplies do I use? We say, okay, get this power filter board. It supports 5 voltages with all the fuses and everything on it. You pair it with these constant current power supplies for your 12 volts, your 5 volts, your 48 volts. It's got 3 huge capacitors. You can run plenty of flippers at the same time, all flipping together without brownouts and losing strength. It's got switches on it for remotely turning off the high voltage, like when you open the coin door, and then reporting back to your software that the voltage is off. There's ground tie points. And again, everything is with the eye of being ready for production. Like, we're not mixing AC and DC on the same power filter board, so that we're doing everything with the best practices so that you can build your machine with the best practices.
Absolutely.
So this is the way we think as we build new boards. Another board is the fast audio board, and I think this is another one that we've not talked about.
This is new.
Before today. So this is new. This is the fast audio board. It's an audio amp that's designed for pinball. Because when you're building your pinball machine, it's always, how do I do sound? You're going to Amazon, you're buying whatever Amazon amp you can. It's got knobs in the back. And we're like, okay, well, first of all, this is audio amps for my speakers and subwoofers in a pinball machine. But it's in a pinball machine, so everything has to be controllable via software, right? The fast serial protocol that we talk to our boards with. None of our boards require drivers. You plug them in via USB, and it's a serial port that shows up, and you send it serial commands. You can use an Arduino as your controller if you want to power all these things. But all of the configuration and adjustment, all the volume, there's line in and digital audio in, but the volume, the fading, the balance, all that kind of stuff is all controlled via software. So if you want to change your balance, you don't have to take the back off the machine and fiddle with the knobs. This also allows people who build pinball machines to do things like player profiles. So I can set the I like a lot of bass in mine, and someone else doesn't. We can actually, someone using whatever software they're using to build their pinball machines could make that into the player profile. We can adjust, like you were saying, the flipper feel, the sound feel. By the way, a lot of people are putting LCD displays inside their pinball machines, and when you get those, there's that little controller board in back, and you have to set bing, 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 input 1, input 2, default resolution. Oh, it always times out to the wrong thing and starts up wrong. So we put the LCD display interface on this board as well. Plug your LCD into this, and now you can control that with software also. So your pinball machine software can make sure the LCD is set up and the inputs are set right and all of these kinds of things. There's the headphone jack. So it's got a headphone jack on it, which you can plug in the front of your machine. We detect if headphones are plugged in via impedance, by the way, so we can detect the magnet on the wire, and then we can apply a different profile based on headphones. So you can say with headphones, I want a lot of bass, or the big cabinet, I don't want the bass, or whatever that's going to be. So again, that's all via software, because this is designed from the ground up for a pinball machine. These multiple profiles saved. By the way, that weird section in the middle and that little circle, you can actually plug a Raspberry Pi directly into the board itself. So if you are powering your machine with the Raspberry Pi, sandwich it in with the board directly. This board also, by the way, has 12-volt power. It does power on detection. It's got 12-volt power outputs for further downstream power things. It's got PC host control. When you flip the power switch of the machine on, it'll turn the computer on. All these little things that you need to make a professional quality production pinball machine that you've always had to hack together in the maker world, we built these products.
I'm just sitting here listening to it going, God, that sounds rad. And I mean, we've worked on this stuff for so long and been under the radar for so many of these projects, and a lot of the projects are just now coming to life. So just getting to hear about all this stuff, I'm enjoying this. So I'm just going to sit here and smile for most of this, I think, but...
It's so fun. I mean, all these things we're talking about is what we call the fast modern platform. The modern platform is if you are building a new machine from scratch, it's all going to be modern hardware. So that Haggis example with Fathom, that's actually ironically the modern platform because it's a new Haggis machine they're building from scratch. Just like when you look at the Chicago game machines, you don't see WPC controllers and PDBs and all that kind of stuff in there. So all of this stuff that we are talking about so far is part of this modern platform ecosystem. And by the way, there's, 12 whatever boards on there. We have over 60 different boards that are doing all sorts of different things. So again, all the little pieces you need to build the pinball machine and take it into production are things that we've thought about. And I feel like every time I go over to Aaron's house, he's showing me some other board that they just created and let's do something with it. Yeah. This is hardware, of course. You also need software. So I don't know if you hear online, certainly you've heard of the Mission Pinball Framework, which is the open source pinball software framework. My name is Brian. I'm actually the creator of the Mission Pinball framework. Now, I created Mission Pinball framework originally 8 years ago, long before I worked for Fast. That's how I get to meet Fast pinball people. That's how I met Aaron and Dave and Eli. Mission Pinball, by the way, is used in hundreds and hundreds of machines. There's so many folks who are, it's an open source project, right? Jan, Anthony, like, there's people working, Quinn, people working on this framework. There's thousands and thousands of hours of work on the framework. And it's not something that's really like part of Fast Pinball. It's an open source thing, but I'm the MPF guy and a Fast Pinball guy, so we're making sure, for example, a lot of people use Mission Pinball Framework for the pinball machines. We're making sure that that Mission Pinball Framework and Fast Pinball hardware integrates together. So we'll make sure we can support customers who are using it. If you want to use Mission Pinball Framework to build a machine that's going to take quarters and deal with drunk people at bars, we will make sure that software and that hardware combination is solid. It's your job to make it fun. So this is all the modern stuff, right? This is all new machines that we're creating. What I really want to talk about, though, today, for the bulk, is our retro platform.
Yeah.
And because this is like, okay, like we are pinball nerds, right? We are way into retro. We love the old games, and look at how, they can re-release games from the 80s and 90s, and everyone's like snapping up like mad. I have several remakes in my house, like I'm one of them. So everything I was describing to you was that fast modern platform for new machines. But the fast retro platform, it's new controllers in classic machines. And this is what we're showing in our booth right now. So, well, I guess, hopefully they're still in our booth right now. Please don't steal anything. But these are the pictures. We've got a fun house over there. The back is off, right? So you see the fast controller in where the MPU board was. We have an Adams family in our booth. And we have a No Good Gophers. So there's two WPC89s and then a WPC95. These are all running in our booth. So our retro platform is taking the fast controllers and putting them in your existing machines. Now, why would you want to do that? A classic machine that's been upgraded with the kit that's powered by the fast retro platform. By the way, a fast retro platform kit, Pedretti. Funhouse Rudy's Nightmare, you heard of, right? That is an example of a fast retro platform kit. So when you buy a kit that's powered by the fast retro platform, you get two things. Number one, it plays all the original 1.0 game. Because we don't believe that you should put a new controller in the machine, like maybe you want to write some new code for it, and then lose the ability to play the machine that's that's a $13,000 paperweight now, if you're not doing anything with it. And the fast retro platform, we worked with Planetary and the licensors that when you are playing the 1.0 game, it is fully licensed and legal. So this is not some back-end hack that you have to worry about getting caught on or whatever. And our goal is for these machines to be competition legal. We'll talk more about that, but the 1.0, we spent a lot of effort making sure the original ROMs play through the fast retro platform. So much of the best players in the world are not able to tell a difference, like the Coke Pepsi challenge, and can't tell if they're playing on the fast retro platform or the original. Sometimes they're like, well, there's no brownouts, so it's not the original with them. So that's one thing you do with the fast retro platform. You play the 1.0 games, but the other piece of it is then it plays the new 2.0 code. So if you're buying something like the Pedretti Funhouse Rudy's Nightmare, when you power it up, there's a switcher. It asks, do you want to play the classic mode or the new mode? Maybe you want to write your own game, and I've got Roadshow in my basement. I love it. My dad poured concrete, was a construction worker. I'm from Ohio. I mean, it's a pinball machine with Ohio in it, and there's a bulldozer and hard hats. Like, how that's not everyone's favorite game in this room is beyond me. Not a heavy 2.0 target for the makers, but we can. But what's nice is I didn't ever want to use MPF to build a 2.0 version of Roadshow because I like Roadshow. So do I get a second one? So now with this, I put the fast retro controller in there. I can run the original Roadshow code in the emulator in original quality, and then also I can flip it into the developer mode and work on my own game and be developing that. So that's what the fast retro platform is. Mm-hmm. As we designed this, we had a bunch of goals. The board drops in. It's no adapters. They are the size and configuration plugs of the original boards. It's a 5-minute install. As I said, the 1.0 emulated games need to play and feel like the originals. We wrote our own emulator for this. This is not PinMame. And so I don't know if you've ever experienced trying to play PinMame emulated game on physical hardware.
It's not the same.
It's not the same. We built an emulator specifically for emulating the original Williams game ROMs running on our platform, and designed it and tweaked it. We spent a lot of time with oscilloscopes and timing and comparisons, and we built this emulation platform to play those 1.0 games as good as the originals. As I said, the 1.0 games are fully licensed and legal and officially supported. You don't lose the old game. By the way, all your existing mods and light kits, because our board plugged in, they're going to work. Because everything from the controller out looks and feels just like the original hardware. It doesn't necessarily even know that there's a fast controller back there, so all those mods you spent all that money on are still going to be in the 1.0 emulated one. And one of our core directives is the fast hardware will not tax the machine more than the original board did. We all know, like, adding mods, adding stuff on, it's like, yeah, just plug in at 12 volts, and hopefully it's okay. Our board actually takes less power than the original board, so we'll give you some of those 5-volt capacity back. But there's a lot of things. We have that switching. If you try Funhouse 2.0 is in the coin taker booth at the show. When it fires up, you can literally push left flipper to play 1.0 game, 2.0 on the right flipper. Our latest update, it's a 5-second long press of start button to kick back to that menu and exit the game and go back and select. So you're not switching wires and cables to switch between 1.0 and the 2.0. All of this is configurable, by the way. So if you buy 2.0 and you just want it to be a 2.0 machine on location and don't want to explain to your mom how to no, you got to switch the game, mom, then push start. You can make it go right into 2.0 or right into 1.0 or not be able to switch or all that kind of stuff. Also, all these 2.0 games, they can access all the modern fast ecosystem stuff we talked about. So we're going to talk more about that also, but all the fast things that people are doing and building are directly accessible via that 2.0 environment. Yeah. This retro controllers, we have a few controllers. If you follow us on Twitter, and basing on our numbers, most of you don't, you will see we tweeted a picture of the fast WPC89 controllers. That's one controller we have. We also have a WPC95 controller, which is out there in the booth right now. And I think this might be another new announcement. What's that big-ass one?
This is our new System 11 board. So this is this board right here is the one I think most people are excited about because a lot of the System 11 games are great games, but the code's not as deep as it could be, So if you can take this interface and write new code against it, it's basically like a theater stage, and you're just doing a more elaborate play on top of it. And I think it's even as I've been kind of showing it off in the booth and talking about it, everyone's been excited about this because I think everyone's looked at these classic System 11 games and said, what would happen if I added ball saves or other modes or new scoring or RGB lighting or other devices and stuff like that. And this interface becomes the gateway to all of that other stuff.
Just the depth of the game, high speed. It's so fun, but really boring. Actually, that's probably a lot of other System 11 games. I own several, so I feel like I'm allowed to say that. But it's, why do I, let's make high speed where one person's the cop and one person's escaping, where you're going cross country, and escaping. Just give it some more stuff there. But with that board that's plug compatible, you take out your existing one, plug in the new one. Even if you're not going to do a game, if you lose an ASIC or you lose a board, and if it's going to, these boards,
these boards will end up being options for replacement CPUs as well. So this is part of our goal with all the effort we put into this was to make them strong enough to stand on their own as well. So we haven't pushed these out as a main project we're selling at the moment because there's the Rudy's Nightmare project and there's other projects like it that are coming along, and we're kind of holding on to supply to make sure that when those products release that they've got the boards they need to do it. But after that, the next phase will be for developers who want to get in and actually write their own code for games. So again, if you have one machine, put one of these boards in there, and like Brian said, you can play the original game, swap over, write some code. If you want to try to remember what the mode was that you liked, you can switch back, play for a little bit, then switch back over and rewrite your code a little bit to fit. It's going to be such a gateway to get a lot of people who've never thought they could write pinball code and make pinball machines a starting point that makes sense for some people. I think a lot of people who would want to make a game have one game, and the idea of turning that and taking the game they know and actually making it do new things, that's a much smaller step than starting with a cabinet, building the cabinet, then making a playfield. Oftentimes you have different groups working on games together. I have a programmer, engineer, woodworker, animator. This is going to let people who want to get their feet wet with programming get in with relative ease.
And I talked about, since I've got the familiarity with Mission Pinball Framework, we'll create configurations, sort of baseline configurations for the machine. because part of if you ever experimented with Mission Pinball Framework or any software framework for a pinball machine, there's a lot of mapping out all your switches and drivers and naming and setting up your device. There's just a lot of grunt work before the fun programming begins. So if we release this and you put in your high speed and it's got that 1.0 code, we can release a MPF configuration that's ready to go, and you can start playing with modes and blinking lights and have a playable game very, very quickly.
Yep.
Again, lowering the barriers to more people creating pinball, whether it's building new machines from scratch or just coding and enhancing existing games. And all of this, by the way, this retro platform stuff for the existing games, I mentioned it integrates with the other components. So here's the fast system controller. Here's our WPC95. Remember the audio board I showed you? Bink. So that also connects into this. So you can plug the Raspberry Pi into that audio board. The audio board and the system controller talking to each other. That's all the hardware for your retro kit, right? You're replacing the original soundboard. You're replacing the original MPU, and the game can be running on the Raspberry Pi, and that's giving. The 1.0 emulation is running off the fast controller itself. The 0.0 code is running off of the Raspberry Pi. If a Raspberry Pi can't cut it for you, you don't have to use a Raspberry Pi. You can use, there's a NVIDIA Jetson, a Nook, use whatever device you want. If you don't plug the Raspberry Pi into the audio controller, that's fine. It just connects via serial anyway, so it doesn't really matter how it's connected. But the idea with this is that everything you need to launch a 2.0 kit, we figured out all the nuances of the hardware and how it talks and where it gets power, how it's going to boot up and how it shuts down and how you do all the things, how to make the power switch work normally without destroying your SD card and all of these types of things. The key with this is it is a path for commercial viability of your games. So another big thing we're announcing today is something called a Fast Developer Program. And this is kind of a preview right now. We're going to fully launch this at the Northwest Pinball Show. Fast Pinball, we're based in the Seattle area, so all four of us are in the Pacific Northwest. But the Fast Developer Program, this is an example. So again, going back to Pedretti with the Funhouse, Rudy's Nightmare, this is like how they engage with us as they're developing that product, and this is something we'll now expand and open up to more people. But this is the path to commercial viability.
Yep.
So if you have this idea for this high speed that you want to build, and you want to write code, and you want to build the MPF and get your friend who's going to do the art and get someone to design the light shows, you now don't have to figure out all the electronics piece and how do I license this and how do I talk. We have the agreements with the licensors already in place, the framework is in place, the way the 1.0 code works is in place, the way it's emulated, the protection, all the stuff that's needed, that's all figured out. So you can just focus on making games. We say we handle boring technical back-end logistics, which I know we like technical things, but we're also like, which diode is it again that's making these two switches coming up together? Like, there's a lot of things we just have randomly working. We prefer to work. So we'll handle those boring back-end technical things. You handle creating games. We want to let people who maybe don't think they have the confidence to build a pinball machine say, we'll handle the hardware. It's an existing, going back to pick your favorite existing machine. We'll handle the hardware. You write the code. And there's more stuff in the world. Yeah. One of my favorite quotes, this is an Aaron quote. We'll handle this in the same way of let you make the game. iPhone game developers don't want to think about cell phone towers, right? But the way it is in the pinball world is if you're a pinball game developer, you are thinking about amps on a FET and how it is striking for. And it's that's the stuff that we can take care of. Those problems have been solved.
Well, and I think there's a lot of that goes further than just making the game work. If you look at it from the standpoint of okay, you made a game, you think it's pretty cool. If you actually want to go and commercially release that using a licensed property, you kind of got to show that it's a product that's not going to tarnish the licensed product, your licensed brand. So you put something out there and it's rough, people's games reset, they shut down, it makes everything in it worse. This program's going to get shut down. So this is something I've worked with Planetary and stuff for a long time. Rick and I've known each other for a long time, and I had a vision for how to provide a path to legitimacy for these things. That says if there's somebody making a game and we've got that game in our studio. So if someone's developing a commercial game, part of what we do is we bring one into one of our workspaces and we'll play along as a pre-alpha test. So if you're trying some stuff out and you think it's getting pretty close, you're probably halfway there. There's a lot of stuff that it takes to actually make that game hardened and ready to go and stand alone and be left unattended at a bar or a restaurant or just even in somebody's home. So if we can say, you build on our platform, and when we feel like your game is solid, when you go to get that license in place, we're behind you going, it's good. Like, we've checked it out, it's good. And I think that what that does, the economics of these 2.0 games are rough. It's not like you're, with planetary licensing, like, games for Chicago Gaming, they're doing thousands of games. These 2.0 kits, your audience is limited by the number of games that were ever made. So, and then of the games that were ever made, how many still exist, how many were owned by somebody and owned by somebody who wants to buy this kit. It gets really small really fast. So what we want to say is that, like, if we can standardize as many things as we can on the platform, then when we go to the licensors and say, we think this kit is built on our platform, it meets all the needs that we feel like it needs, then the idea of the license review is the game, does it have no bad words, does it have no offensive content, and are the legal lines and stuff all in the right place? And then you get the thumbs up, and you've got Funhouse 2.0 like it is out on the floor. And I think those are the things that, when we obsess about this stuff, it's not just about like what it takes to build the game, it's what lets you take it as far as you want to go. And I think what we've really enjoyed over the years is seeing people make homebrew games, these 2.0 kits, like on and on and on. And now it's like you're seeing companies who are wanting to make commercial games, and there's more of them coming. And we're loving being, I describe it as like, for a company who's going to go make a pinball machine, you need fast pinball for maybe 10% of that whole journey, because you want really good focused people to make sure this part of your game is rock solid, and then you go back to sourcing parts, designing cool games, and manufacturing that part of it. But if you make the engineering and the stability and the system design something that you just hope works out, you're going to be solving that problem all the way through. So this is the part that I love, being able to jump into a complex problem and help solve it. And when you see people who are making kit games, manufacturing commercial games, we love being available to help those projects be successful, because it's in our DNA. We love seeing things come to life. And the retro platform is just another way to get new people in, making new things, and seeing what they can create.
Then the final piece that I think I'm most excited about, this is another, I believe it's a new announcement today at the show, to show off, is the Fast Mod platform. Gosh, I mean, we're suckers for mods, right? All of us are. And I'm embarrassed at how much, you take a Hot Wheels car and like put a pinball logo on it, and it's like, there's a return. But mods are really fun. And so this whole platform approach we took to our modern platform, to our retro platform, to everything we're doing, we said, what can we do for the mod community? Like, what would enable mod makers to create the richest mods that have the most interactivity with the game? And because if you look at it, right now, there's really 3 ways that a mod maker can tap into existing hardware, right? The first thing is they watch the hardware. They clamp onto something, right? They're watching switches, or they're watching the light matrix, or they're watching driver lines. Right. And then when a driver does something or pattern happens, they can say, oh, I think probably this happened, and I triggered that in the mod. That's the first way that they integrate mods. The second way is hooking into the audio command bus, just sniffing that and looking for audio commands. The WPC controller is telling the machine to play and figuring out what's happening that way. And then the third way is scanning the display content, again, for keyframes and things like that they can recognize to figure out what's going in the game. So the Fast Mod platform is a new model for this type of interactivity. And again, think in this retro platform, Fast is running the emulation, right? We're running the 1.0 ROM emulator on our boards. So since we're running the emulation, we have access to the full inside workings of that game. We can literally go in the memory registers and see anything we want about that game. So this enables us to do what we call like non-obvious things. Like, hey, when did a player surpass the high score? So now they're going to be like, they're on the grand champion track. And maybe you want to mod that, like, tap dances, that you're the new leader, something like that, like, or any other types. I mean, the sky's the limit for what you could do. But anything you could think about logistically that could happen, we can build in these mods.
I'll say with this, we've talked about this part of it in the booth already, and everybody comes up with like, oh my God, I want to make this happen. It's like it gets the wheels turning, and we've had. One of my favorite things about going to these shows is we get what's called like the bring back, right? Where I'm talking to one person, getting all excited about something, they leave, grab somebody else, and say, "Tell them what you just told me." And then tell me more. And I think that one of our main goals for coming down here was like to meet more mod makers, like the people that are doing the sculpts, the models, the physical things. That's the hard part with this stuff. Making it move and do things, like We think that's the easy part. So if you've had the idea of like this big ogre character standing up on top of your game, you know you can carve that and make it look perfect, paint it just right. We want to make its arms move and pound a surface when a certain sequence of events happens, you know? That's the stuff that's going to open up like really some new ideas for complex mods.
And the platform with the documentation, with everything set up, makes it so if you are an artist or mechanical engineer, we'll give you a board, you plug right into it, it's got all the signals you need. So we're running the ROMs, right? We're running the 2.0 code, we're looking at that, we can see what's actually happening in the game, and then we convert these to an event that goes over the standard fast event bus. So there's Cat5 like cables they're plugging in, and so you have a little board for your mod, you plug it into our controller, and we're gonna send you events. And they're events on whatever you want to be triggering things on, player change, game change, mode starts, all these types of things. So the sky's the limit. By the way, that's for all the retro games. Of course, the 2.0 games can be written to use those mods natively. So if it's high speed, you want to make a topper with, you know, whatever it is, that interacts with the 1.0 game, they can use that mod interface. And if someone writes a 2.0 game, then they could talk to your mod directly. So we're really making mods smarter and more interactive. And the way these mods work is, let me go back to those pictures of the controllers. That's the System 11 WPC95 controller that I had on the screen earlier. You see these things that look like Ethernet jacks. They're not Ethernet jacks, but those jacks, there's two of those are our expansion bus jacks. That's what the mod hooks into. So it's just plugging a cable, like a Cat5 cable, snap that in. Then the expansion board, this is what the mod maker themselves would use. So this expansion board, it has those same kind of jacks on it. So you plug the other end of that expansion bus from your controller into that little board. What's on this board? It's got, oh, by the way, there's another connector. So if you have more mod boards, they just chain them along. But this example board here has RGB LEDs on it that it controls. It has servos and steppers and other serial devices it controls. It has 12 volts, where you can connect up other 12-volt things like your opto boards or other boards or downstream boards or these kinds of things. So in these mod boards come in different footprints. So there's one example here, which is a smaller one. There's a larger one that's got more stuff on it. Again, these are all plugged in via that same thing. We built one board that's actually designed for the inside your cabinet, which that's a photo from our booth right now. We just stuck on the back of Adam's Family. It's got those giant caps on it. It's got shaker motor support. So if you're a mod maker and you want to add shaker motor, or if just you're a regular user and you want to have some mods to plug in and add the shaker motors, that's plugging in the bottom of your cabinet. Cat5's connected back up into the head for your controller. Plug the LEDs in there, under cabinet lighting, your shaker motor, all these kinds of things. And again, even your 1.0 emulated code in the original game, we're sending out events so that mod can interact in a very, very fun way.
And one of the things about this one, especially this cabinet board, it's kind of like when we add to a game, add our boards, add mods and things like that, we want to kind of slip ourselves into the game and then let you build upon that. So for example, like this cabinet board here, you can put into the service outlet, a wall wart style like 10 amp, 12 volt supply, plug it into this board, and the line that Brian described that runs up to the controller is actually what turns that on and off. So that power's on when the system's on. When you turn the game off, it turns that off. So it's not just sitting in there on your service outlet the whole time. But also what you can see on the upper corner, right corner with those two lines coming out of that, I have that in this game going to an Rgb Dmd, right? So that's on when the system's on. When it's not, those lines are switched. So that display will turn off. So if you had an LCD display, audio amplifier, whatever else it was in your game, it's gonna manage that stuff. So it doesn't just, again, just sit there like bleeding power. The shaker motor option here as well, that if you had that 10 amp 12 volt supply, that's enough to run the shaker motor on that. So right within this board, everything's isolated so that shaker motor running is not gonna mess up your electronics or cause another distraction. But it gives us, this board really right here was a standard board that any 2.0 game or other project could build on, because what we running out of this board in the Adams Family that we have there is like an exterior cabinet lighting set where all the pixels are in the same place. So any game that's got these in there can add this to the game. They can add shaker motor and exterior cabinet lighting support, and that's just there. So the 2.0 games, when we release those as like enhanced games, maybe we've got kind of an ambient lighting thing that's going on and a shaker motor option and stuff in there. But the game code that's written to run against this can actually call out to the system and see if this is even there. So it's, for example, if you were going to have something that hold on, I've got another one here. So should I show this one?
Go for it, yeah.
Okay, so there was a lot of talk, like in like the Funhouse thread, for example, about adding like auto plungers. Okay, and so the challenge with adding an auto plunger is not how to trigger a coil. That's easy. The hard part was how do you set up a coil to fire in a game that didn't originally have that technology or that configuration, but make the 1.0 code still work the way it's supposed to, and a 2.0 code had the option to run an auto plunger. So we made this little board here, and so the way this is designed is basically a relay that you use to hijack basically the coil firing of the trough. Okay, so you're never going to fire your auto plunger and your trough at the same time. So if we know that the ball's been kicked out, you're not sending a command from your game code or the emulated code saying fire coil 7. You're saying fire the auto plunger, and the system can know that this is in here and then fire that auto plunger. Basically, just uses the same driver that fired the kick in the ball into the shooter lane, switches on that, and then kicks it out instead as an auto plunger. But the cool thing too is like this device can be detected. So obviously, like a shooter mod, it'll be fine.
We test them in paint shakers.
So if you added in the auto plunger, say for example, if you go play Rudy's Nightmare 2.0 game out there, it doesn't have an auto plunger in there. It kicks the ball out. When it's ready for you to add another one, on the screen it says shoot another ball. What you could do with this piece in here is they could tell in code that the auto plunger exists, so don't put on the screen, plunge the ball if it's already going to be plunged. So adding just a little bit of intelligence like that can make a variable presence of a mod like this into something that you can simply write code for back and forth. So yeah, that's actually the hardest part about adding auto plungers to games like Funhouse, for example, is not, like I said, the coil fire. It's the geometry of the way that ball kicks into the shooter lane and the way everything else lies out around that. So we said, like, if you solve that part of it, we can make the rest of it work easy.
This is an example. We talk about the Fast Mod platform because that little auto plunger add-on piece is talking on that same expansion bus, that same mod bus. And we're trying to prevent the scenario where you've got a bunch of different mods from a bunch of different makers, and then you've got like power strips inside your machine with all these wall warts, and like some of them are like on always, and you're getting brownouts on your line. You tap in here, tap in there, and it becomes more complicated. So having the mod platform that can have strong power, its own power, it's pulling the power from the boards, it's doing the auto on sense detection, that's allowing us to then create all these other little boards, or other people to create the little boards that are adding the mods and enhancements, again, the 1.0 code as well as that 2.0 code. Because by the way, I mentioned in the beginning, our controller, that Neuron Controller, which we didn't talk about, and that's not the point of today, but it's got that same mod expansion bus too. So this whole mod platform, even if you're building a brand new machine from scratch, but you just like the elegance of that mod platform and you want to enable third-party makers to be able to add on their own mods in the intelligent way, not having to clamp onto things, all of our controllers from this point forward have that mod expansion bus built in.
Yeah, so if you have like a really rich topper that, it's like a whitewater topper where, it's designed to have a Yeti hiding in the woods, and when the other Yeti yells, like it pops out and waves at it or something like that. That could work with our retro board. Say we made some remakes of whitewater that we're using our modern platform. That same topper can talk to the system. So, what we're really hoping is that like the people that want to make these really cool mods, it's not just in one perfect scenario. We can actually spread that across a lot of different ways to integrate it. And I think that's really where we're trying to look bigger picture than just with the controllers itself. And I think that a lot of the mod makers and stuff like that we've met and that we've talked to already, making things move and power them and stuff like that is not the attractive part. It's to show off the craft and make something really beautiful. And I think that if we can make their beautiful things have a deeper life and a richer experience, even on the topper example, like just talking about like kind of guidance that we've come up with is to say like if you're building a topper on our platform, like these expansion boards that Brian had showed, you could have a topper where you just plug 12 volts into it and it sits on your desk and it's playing light cycles and looks pretty. That's it, just in its idle state. In a 1.0 game, it can be sitting there interacting with the existing game code, responding and doing fun things. But then in the 2.0 game code, they can actually interact with the individual devices. If that Yeti's got an arm that waves, maybe there's one routine that the 1.0 game code triggers and he does a wave and it moves on. But in the game, in a 2.0 game, you could actually control that very specifically to coordinate a dance with the music they're using or whatever it is. So, I think that a lot of the goal here is really to get the creativity not being the limit of how great these things can be.
And again, all those mod boards have ARM processors on them as well. So there's intelligence in all the boards, and they're able to do very rich experiences and control very complex things. And again, the people building the mods can program to those in whatever language they want, or however they want. So that's the mod platform. That's kind of the end of the things we want to talk about. I guess, like, now what? Kind of next step type things. I guess I'll say, first of all, we have our documentation website, docs.fastpinball.com.
This guy writes some docs.
It's easy because these guys build the stuff and I write about it. But there's tutorials, product manuals, how-to guides. There's a lot of how-to guides for general pinball design, like wiring and grounding and what is earth ground and all that sort of stuff. The color standards, wiring guides, tutorials on how to get your board set up. All these kinds of things. So all that's out there. That's the next step. You can go to fastpinball.com. The bottom of the list is the email newsletter. Is our Fast Friends, I think we call it, newsletter. So we'll keep you up to date on all that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's basically it, and that's what we want to talk about today. Final shout out though, we have a lot of friends here in Texas that were really awesome and really hooked us up with this show.
Yeah, Eric from Titan brought us a fun house we put in the booth. Brian Savage brought a couple games, and No Good Gophers and Adam's Family. I mean, it's so great that people were willing to bring their games and put them in, trust us with their games to take stuff out, plug other things in, and hope it comes out good the other side. We just hope that our tinkering with things actually makes it come back a little better. But yeah, this has been great. We're so excited to be here. I mean, we actually are this excited about stuff. It's been pent up for a long time to come out and talk to everybody in public on these things. And come by the booth, you'll see all the games, have the back boxes open, because we're changing code on things and just kind of goofing off here for a few days and making some friends. So definitely come by and say hi.
Yeah, our booth is by that giant foam castle, which is not ours, by the way. There's some great mod makers.
That is so awesome.
But yeah, they're setting that up yesterday, and they just build higher and higher and higher, and I'm like, oh my gosh, pinball conferences are so much better than IT conferences. But we're right next to them. Our machines are open. You can see them. You can touch them. Our undercount lighting, the mod system, the retro platform. All of our boards are here. We can answer questions. So please stop by. We're here. We'll be online. Documentation's coming out. All these announcements, and you'll see more and more from us. We have 2 minutes left-ish, 2-3 minutes. I don't know if there's any questions. There's a lot of folks watching on Discord, or on Twitch. So thank you all for watching there. Questions from anyone in the audience? The question is, are we going to update our bundles to the Neuron processor?
Yes.
The answer is yes. Also, if you have a Nano controller, the older one, we have a little hat that adds those expansion bus connectors to it. And if you buy some expansion stuff and you have a Nano, we'll just give it to you. It's just a little plug-on to do that. Yes? Yes, yeah, so the question is there an active online community for this, for people who are working on things?
Yeah, we have a fast Slack channel. When we first set it up, I'd kind of made the rule that you actually had to own fast hardware to be in it. And I got a lot of pushback on that initially, but over time it became everybody in there talking about games has actually skin in the game. There's no people sitting on the sideline thinking they know about pinball. You actually, at least one point, bought a set of fast hardware. You have the potential to build something. So it's been a fantastic community. I mean, everyone is sharing their experiences, learning. And my favorite thing is when the new guy helps the newest person that comes along, because they learned a few things just a couple weeks before them. So that's something that's very cool to see, is how willing everybody is to help. There's no dumb questions. We've all had those same questions. We've all blown something up at some point, and that experience is something that everybody likes to share. So
yeah, there's over 100 people in it. It's super active. I've been on it all day here, and let's see. There's many of them watching. Hey guys, we're talking about you all right now. So that's super rad. So yeah, buy a kit. We'll throw it in the Slack group, and we'll all hang. Awesome. We got maybe time for one more question if there's anything else. Otherwise, we are in the booth. We are in the booth. It's super fun. We got the machines there. Come and hang out. We'll be here, obviously all day, all night tomorrow, whatever. Find us online, fastpinball.com. from Eli and Dave, who are watching back in Seattle, from all of our makers and friends on Slack, from all the folks online, from myself, Brian.
And me, Aaron.
To all of you, thank you so much for coming to watch today. Make some pinball!
That was so fun to listen to.